Hey y'all, welcome to Shade in the City. It's your girl Treese here, and I'm here to give you season 2, episode 57. This would have been March 27th episode of Beyond the Gates. If you guys have not already, please go ahead, do me a favor, hit that like button. And for all my new viewers, if you have not already, please go ahead and subscribe if you're liking the vibe. And also, hype us up. Hey, hype us up. Okay, I appreciate you. So please, and look, I appreciate you in advance. All right, y'all. So let's go ahead. Let's not waste no time because, as I said in the last video, y'all, I got meetings all week. This week, next week, I got to get up early. It's really hurting me getting out this BTG content, which I hate. But anyway, thankful for my job. All right. So let's get into it and let's get shady, y'all.
From skyline pain, shade in the city, true hits like a banger. I said it, I meant it, no need for disclaimers. Haters right away, but they just false claimers. Concrete beats are heavy like cinder. Looking for one, but the streets feel winter. No filters, no edits, I'm raw with my splendor. My life a movie, they watching the trailers. I'm not gonna hold you, shade in the city, there's life in the mold. You like and subscribe if you feeling the vibe. This is my word, I just let you inside. Said in the city, I'm not gonna hold you, shade in the city, my words gon' console you. Like and subscribe if you feeling the vibe.
So, y'all, this episode kicks off. Leslie and Vernon are still going at it at the country club. She accuses him of suggesting that she has no class, okay? And scolds him for tearing down a woman in the same club his father established to build people up and says, your daddy must be rolling over and over in his grave. So Vernon said, no. My dad was a magnanimous man, okay? And says that one of the lessons that he instilled in me was to never suffer fools. And said, and he would be really proud of me for putting that into practice before he walked away. So Leslie said, look, despite the venom that you spit my way, I plan to rise above. I fly above, okay? I fly above. Y'all remember that song by Candy that didn't really go nowhere. So she says she understands Vernon is under a lot of stress because Anita is sick, but she warns, I ain't gonna be so nice the next time you get up in my face. And so Vernon said, you instigated this conversation and the larger fight by building that eyesore across the street from us. So he tells Leslie that you can set aside that manufactured indignation because you will never have a moral high ground. And so Leslie claims, I am a pillar in the community and warns Vernon, and you better be careful. You're going to end up looking up at me versus the other way around. And Vernon tells her, if you actually believe that, then you're nuttier than the fruitcake that you gave to me and Anita before bidding her a good day. Okay. Over at Vernita's house, Bill is reviewing the changes Anita wanted to make to her living trust and says, they're small. So he's confused why she doesn't want Vernon involved. And so Anita makes it clear that there's another significant change she wants to make, and that's to add Bill as co-executor next to Vernon. So Anita is telling him that, look, I'm not trying to keep Vernon out of the loop, but I don't see a need to bring it up if you're not willing to do it. So she adds that she wants to make him co-trustee of their joint trust that her and Vernon share as well. And so Bill says, look, I'll happily take on both roles, but I don't think Vernon is going to agree to it. And Anita knows that, if the worst happens, Vernon is going to need someone to help him navigate things. And she shares how she witnessed how this illness has affected Vernon. And he's already admitted that he doesn't think he's going to make it without her. So she said, I was considering Nicole and Danny, but I think that that's too much to put on them while they're dealing with their own grief. So Anita tells Bill, I know that you're a great attorney and you can remain objective and clear-headed during an emotionally fraught time. And so Bill is honored that Anita would trust him with her last wishes. And Anita reminds Bill, you are the father of my grandchildren, okay? And we have a common goal, which is looking out for our family. And so Bill promises, look, I ain't gonna let you down. And he wishes her luck when she has this conversation with Vernon. And Anita admits, yeah, I'm gonna need it. I know. So Danny and Nicole are down at Uptown having drinks, and they're just reflecting on the fact that they can't believe their mother was really ready to give up. And so Nicole mentions that Anita still has a long way to go in her cancer journey, but she's willing to take any wins that she can get right now. So she asked Danny, where did you run to after you left the hospital? And Danny admits that she went to Bill's office. So Danny mentions how Anita's recent health scare has Bill rethinking his life and his life choices, like having a baby with Haley. Nicole questions if this is more than about Bill facing his mortality and suggests that maybe he wanted her to know because he thinks that there's a chance that they can get back together. And I said, I hope. Look, y'all know I love me some Bill down, okay? But you haven't done enough. Yes, you've been good to Mama Anita. We appreciate you for that, Bill. But the way you did our girl Danny, no. We still need more time. Okay. Now, we see Haley at Bill's office ear hustling on a conversation between Lynette and Tomas. So Lynette has stopped by to drop off a gift basket for Tomas and Bill for working on her case. And she claims, she just had to stop by because, they just made her feel so special. And Tomas tells her, well, that's because you are. And I said, oh, what's going on here? All right. Now, we get back in front of this brick wall, and this time it's Jacob and Smitty. Jacob reports that he's making progress with Grayson by asking him to keep Max safe, and he explains that Grayson basically had to trust him to do that. Now that they've both taken a risk, it's paid off. And so Smitty asks, well, what's next? And, are you going to offer up a secret that neither one of you can afford to get out? And Jacob says, yeah, that's kind of the plan. He was like, well, it'll prove that you both care more about human lives than the work that you're doing on the red market. And so Jacob says, it's promising, but I still haven't gotten any solid info from Grayson. So Jacob said, but it does feel good to have someone to bounce this off of. And thanks, Smitty, for, sticking around. And so Smitty said, look, I'm just concerned about you juggling these two aliases. And Jacob assures him, I got this, okay? And I hope this time when I talk to Grayson that he's going to open up about whoever his contact is at the hospital. So back over at Garland, Ashley is talking to Grayson and she's trying to figure out what he meant by he didn't want her to get her feelings hurt. He just chucks it off to, I'm under a lot of stress right now and I just don't always handle it well. So that makes me an asshole, basically. And so Grayson said, but, I don't want to let you down because I believe that, we got a good thing going. And I said, Ashley, you better than me because ain't no way we in a dating phase and you're going to keep talking to me crazy. Unless we was just hunching and there's no need for talking. I don't even understand how this relationship is still going on. But anyway, so, or situationship, whatever it is. So Naomi is still at the hospital. She's playing dumb on the phone with Isaiah after he had asked her about the burner that Jacob gave her. And so Isaiah was like, look, Naomi, you ain't got to play dumb. I know that man gave you a burner phone because he told me about it when I ran into him in front of the brick wall. And so Naomi reminds him, okay, but you told me you ain't heard from Jacob. And so Isaiah explains, well, that's because Jacob asked me not to say anything. So Naomi asked, well, did Jacob say you could use the burner? And Isaiah said, nah, he didn't. But he was like, mom is really worried and just wanted to hear his voice and tell him that she loves him in case. And then he stopped short. So Naomi finished the statement, oh, in case you think Jacob ain't going to make it home. And Isaiah tries to walk it back, but it's too late. But Naomi said, look, if you didn't feel that way, you wouldn't be calling me. Okay. And she warns him, this could get Jacob hurt. And I can't believe you even asking me this. So that's when her voice heightens and this catches Ashley and Grayson's attention. So Grayson was like, what's going on with Naomi? Why she all worked up? And Ashley just shrugs it off and tells, she's just probably on the phone with one of her clients. She's real passionate about her cases. Okay. So Isaiah apologizes to Naomi, but asks, can you just allow it this one time for my mom? And Naomi said, look, Isaiah, don't make me the bad guy. You tripping. And if Jacob wanted you to reach him, he would have gave you a way to do so. And so she advises Isaiah, if Darlene needs reassurance, she need to get it from her own damn husband, Chief Daddy. And I said, well, so that's when Isaiah goes back to Darlene and he apologizes and admits that he tried to put her in touch with Jacob, which put Naomi in a bad position. And Darlene scolds Isaiah for what he did and says, I was just venting. And tells him Naomi had a right to shut you down because that's dangerous as hell. And so she knows whatever Jacob arranged for them to stay connected was just for them. And she was like, and I would never impose on that. Back over in front of the brick wall, Jacob informs Smitty that he has another pickup at Garland that day and will try to talk to Grayson and get more info. And so Smitty is just hopeful that Jacob having Grayson's back will help him open up. So Jacob gets a text from Naomi asking him to meet up later that afternoon. And so Smitty was like, is everything all right? And Jacob said, I'm not sure, but it's not like her to ask to see me. So Smitty informs Jacob that Anita took a turn for the worse the other day and she had to go to the hospital. And so Jacob obviously is hurt that he can't be there for Naomi. And so Smitty offers to take care of Naomi so Jacob can focus on this case. Back over at Uptown, Danny tells Nicole that she's reaching thinking Bill wants to reunite with her. And so Nicole suggests that Bill pulling back on wanting another child with Haley might be because it would lock him into that relationship and suggest that maybe there's some cracks in that marriage. So she said, we've all wondered how long this honeymoon with Bill and Haley was going to last. And she said, and I know you would love it if Bill admitted that he made a mistake and wanted you back. So Danny admits that, yeah, I might like that if I wasn't with Andre. But even if I did, I wouldn't want him. However, She said, I am with Andre and I love him very much. And Nicole counters, it's difficult closing the door on someone who's been such a big part of your life. So Danny was like, and I don't feel like I have to. And she shares how, they have this newfound friendship and she feels like she should thank Haley for that. And so Nicole takes her glass and said, oh, bitch, let's cut you off because you talking crazy now. Now, back over at Bill's office, Tomas asks Lynette her plans now that she's free. And so Lynette changes the subject and asks Tomas, what do you like to do? Okay. So Tomas mentions that he's a foodie and he's into salsa dancing. And so Lynette was like, oh, okay. And he was like, and maybe I should let you show you my moves. And so she was like, does that line actually work on somebody? And so Tomas responds, you tell me. So that's when Lynette tells him, don't try to play a sweetheart, okay? And then Haley walks in and interrupts and tells him, this stops right now. I say, girl, bye. So we jump back over to Garland where Ashley tells Grayson, look, I need a minute to talk to Naomi, but can you hang out for a second? So she mentions to Naomi that she sounded upset on that phone call she was on, and Naomi doesn't want to talk about it and tells Ashley, look, I got plans to go meet Smitty for lunch, so I'm going to go do that. So that's when Leah pops up, okay? And tells Grayson, I won't speak with you because, I got a job for you. So Grayson said, look, I already got a drop scheduled for later that afternoon. She tells him, no. This ain't about the plasma, okay? She said, I want you to take it. Well, actually, it is about the plasma. Let me take that back. She said, I want you to take your butt over there down to the Phoenix Street, whatever clinic and volunteer. And Grayson's confused because he was like, you already sent me over there to scope it out. And so Leah said, okay. And that was to see the potential supply source. And now I want you to learn the day-to-day operations of the clinic and their procedures for blood collection. And she feels like because, it's a smaller clinic, they're not going to be tracking things as closely as they do at Garland. And so Grayson warns Leah that might not be the case since Derek is the one managing the clinic. And you do realize I'm dating Derek's ex-girlfriend. And so he's like, I don't think I'm the right person for the job. And so Leah tells him, you've been managing just fine here at Garland, okay? Surrounded by people and you'll manage there. Get over it. And so Leah lets Grayson know, I'm not really interested in your complaints, and I'm going to talk to your boss in the lab so we can make sure that we can accommodate this volunteering schedule. And then she tells him about, Derek coming to ask to partner with Garland and says that she looks forward to this new partnership. So Grayson tries to talk her out of trying to recruit Derek because he's a good guy. And Leah says, I ain't ready to count him out just yet because everyone has a price. And you're proof to that. I said, ooh. Okay. So Ashley returns to nurse station. She was like, was Leah coming down on you? And Gracie explains that Leah is the type to let people know who's in charge. And Ashley said, well, Leah didn't used to be like that when I started. She was warm and friendly. Just then, Grayson gets a notification on his phone, and he tells Ashley, look, I need to run off. But he's like, is Naomi good? And Ashley just assures him, it's just exactly what I thought. She is just frustrated with one of her cases. That's it. That's all. So Leslie returned. So back over at the country club, Leslie has returned to the table with Eva, and she's like, where the peaches go? And so Eva tells her that, I took her to the spa to get her massage. And so Leslie claims, well, I need one because the Duprees are getting on my nerves. And I said, no, I think it's the other way around. But she was like, well, why didn't you wait for peaches? And Eva says, because I didn't know how long he was going to be going off on Vernon. So Leslie tries to make it seem as if Vernon disrespected her. And Eva says, I can't imagine Vernon being ugly to anyone. And so Leslie said, well, I ain't really raised you to take people at face value, especially self-important ones like the Duprees. So she says, it ain't going to happen on my watch. Okay. And I refuse to let them push me out of Fairmont Crest. So Eva tells Leslie, look, this feud with the Duprees is ridiculous. And I think we are all in agreement with that. So Leslie agrees and claims, I'm just trying to build a house. She said, and Vernon is the one that shut me down over minor construction violation. And Eva reminds her, you built a house across the street and had construction going on all hours during the day and night, even though you knew Anita was sick. Leslie claims, well, I didn't know that, but I cut back on the hours. And Eva responds, only after they made you cut back. So Leslie said, if they would have asked me nicely, I might have done it on my own. So she feels like she put, so much money into this house and she belongs there, but the Duprees refuse to accept it. And then she brings up sponsoring the new sports center at the country club and funding the free clinic, but thinks, nothing will satisfy the Duprees. And Eva says, look, I understand your disappointment, Mama, Okay. But a little diplomacy wouldn't hurt. And she asked Leslie, like, and so she asked Leslie, why do you always feel like you need to poke the bear? And Leslie tells her, bitch, because I am the bear. And I said, well, ain't that the truth? So then Sharon returns after Bill has departed, and she realizes that Anita doesn't look like she's feeling too well. So she offers to help her upstairs, but Anita doesn't want to go and suggests that they just sit together. And so Sharon pulls a pillow off the couch and instructs Anita to lay down in her lap. I thought this was so sweet. That's when Vernon walks in and sees Sharon humming to Anita as she rests, and he, mouths, "Thank you," right? And so Sharon asks Vernon how his squash game went, and Vernon explains that he missed his slot because he got held up with that bull with Leslie. And so Sharon tells him, you probably really needed that to clear your head. And Vernon explains seeing Anita relaxed and cared for is very good for his soul. So that's when Anita wakes up from her nap, and Sharon shares an old story about how her and her mother got into it when she was younger. And she ran to Anita all upset, and Anita took care of her. Anita said, Sharon and Tracy have returned that favor many times, like the sisters that they are. Anita and Vernon thank Sharon for, coming over to spend some time with her. And Sharon advises Anita to remember that you have a song deep down in your soul. And it just made me think, I got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart, down in my heart, down in my, I got the joy. I'm sorry. It literally reminded me of that. And Sharon advises that she listen to it and let it guide her strength and health. And so Sharon lets herself out, and Anita tells Vernon about wanting to update the trust and asking Bill to be her co-trustee as well as executor for her individual trust and their joint. And surprisingly, Vernon doesn't seem to have any issues with Anita's request and agrees that if he were to lose Anita, he would rather spend time comforting his girls than shuffling through paperwork. So that was light work for Anita when she thought it was going to be hard. And of course, Anita loves that he's just so agreeable and not putting up a fight because she ain't got the strength to do it. Now, back over at Uptown, Danny explains to Nicole that she's not sending Haley no thank you cards for blowing up her marriage, but she realizes if Bill never had an affair, then she wouldn't have ended up in bed with Andre, and that crazy, reckless choice set her on the path that she's on now with her loving marriage and, breaking back into modeling. And Nicole says, okay, bitch, I see you. Nicole says, I'm amazed at you being grateful for what you gained versus what you lost. Okay, sis. So Danny jokes about being the picture of personal growth. And she then shares, Haley's lack of a reaction to Bill no longer wanting to start a family with her. And so Nicole tries to give Haley the benefit of the doubt and thinks that she just may be scared of having another miscarriage. However, Danny disagrees and suggests, no, I think she just after Bill money, and I think you just give it. She realized she ain't got to have his baby to get his money. And I said, ding, 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 ding. So back over at Bill's office. And so Tomas says, Haley, what are we supposed to be stopping? And says, I was just giving Lynette a friendly send-off. And Haley tells him, you were too friendly and you crossed the line. So Tomas said, nah, bitch, let's go deeper with crossing the line. You want to talk about mothers. That's really what it gave me. So Tomas said, I spent a lot of time on Lynette's case before the charges were dropped, and points out that it was Lynette who came by dropping off the gift basket and says, there's nothing indecent about what we're doing. So Haley says, you still gone too far mixing business with pleasure. And so Ma says, that's interesting since you were Bill's paralegal who was very married and then became his second wife. Y'all know I hate to agree with Tomas. Y'all know I hate this. Down in my heart. I hate it. But when the man got points, he got points. So Haley advises Tomas, you need to go back to your office because I thought you getting too big for your britches. You forgot who you was talking to. So after he leaves, Haley asks Lynette, what are you doing, girl? And so Lynette claims, girl, I just had a little fun. There ain't no fun and the homies can't get none. And so, she was like, it's nice to see Tomas in his casual mode. So Haley tells her that, look, Tomas was acting a little too interested in you, and tells Lynette, and he's also dating Bill's niece. And he would never be that stupid to flirt with somebody else in his office. He was like, and so Haley suggests, nah, he was trying to gain your trust, hoping you would slip up. And Lynette tells her, well, my case is done. So why would he be interested in me? And then she said, oh no, he wants information about you. That part. So Haley was like, we can't let that happen. And that's when Bill walks into the office. And that's when Haley explains to Bill why Lynette came by. And once Lynette leaves and, gives her, thank you so much for helping me. You made me feel so special. Thank you so much, Bill. And then before Lynette leaves, Haley said, don't worry about Tomas. I promise to keep him away from you. So Bill's confused. And that's when Haley lies about how she walked in to find Tomas being inappropriate with Lynette. And that's when I said, I really don't like you. I really don't like you. Okay. So then Smitty and Naomi have met up at the country club, and Naomi tells Smitty that, she's been having a rough couple of days, and she starts ranting about Jacob being gone, being worried about Anita, and she just feels like she's constantly worried about everything. And so Smitty consoles and overwhelms Naomi and advises her to come by and visit the Smarty house whenever she's feeling lonely. And of course, Naomi likes this idea because she'd rather do that than go spend it with Darlene. So back at Orphe Jeans, Isaiah expresses to his mother that he feels unappreciated. He was like, I was the one trying to, get you to talk to Jacob, and here you are biting my head off. And Darlene admits I was a little harsh and, blame it on me being with your angry daddy for all these years, okay? And I said, yeah, y'all just a really harsh, angry family. So she lets Isaiah know that she does appreciate his attempt, but she also lets him know that, I'm really proud of how you walked away from your dad's expectations of you, and you out here being independent, making your own way. So that's when Eva walks in and Isaiah introduces her to Darlene. Isaiah invites Eva to join them, and Darlene gets up in a hurry claiming, you know what, it's about time for me to start this shift. 911 can't be late. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I gotta go. Nice meeting you, heifer. And so Eva asks Isaiah, did you clock that energy and that your mama was just giving me? And Isaiah was like, I felt like she was polite, and she just needs some time to get to know you. And Eva was like, yeah, okay. The last scene is we see Grayson get on the elevator with Jacob to make a drop, and that's when Ashley gets on with him. End scene. All right. So thank y'all for being here with me for the recap and review of season 2, episode 57 of Beyond the Gates. If you guys haven't already, please make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you comment. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit the notification bell. And also make sure you're following us on all the platforms. That's the TikTok, the Twitter, the Facebook, the IG, the Blue Sky, and the Lemonade. Also, like I said in my last post, I'll post it on the community board. We are hosting a joint event with Really Be July 18th in Bowie, Maryland. We're going to be rented out a whole content creation space. It's going to be really cute. We'll have light appetizers, hors d'oeuvres, all that great stuff. And, just create, relate, and, mix and mingle. All right. But it's more information on the flyer if you're interested in pricing and attending and coming to hang out with us, because, who doesn't love a good link up? But I love y'all. I will holler at y'all later. Bye-bye.